Welcome back, Nuggets. This mother clucker's got some thoughts. Let's ruffle some feathers and get into the video. And if you would like to support my baby chick of a channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hype this video, and go check out my other videos while you're here, especially if you haven't seen my first video on this topic. Definitely go check that out because I go into a massive deep dive about exactly what the court case is, and I will not be going into that kind of depth again on this video because this is all about the judge's ruling. Also, by the way, I forgot to mention in my last video, if you are here listening to this video before the 13th of November, that is my first Chukin birthday and I'm so excited about it. I'm doing a bit of a Q&A AMA thing to celebrate. So if you want to take part in that, head on over to my post tab. It'll be the first post you see there and yeah, leave me a question. Okay, so in my last video, I broke the story about TikTok fighting a legal battle over Eugenia Cooney discovery. And I said when we hear about the judge's ruling, I would be back to deliver an update, but I didn't think it would be this quick. But here we are. So here I am. Well, the judge has ruled and TikTok lost. Kind of. And we're going to get into it. But more importantly, and can I just say, my nuggets, I'm so appreciative to be given this space to develop this kind of toolkit, because if you have been following me for a while, you know that this kind of investigative journalism is not really what I do. It's not my wheelhouse, and I am so new to it, and I'm learning so much as I go, which is thanks to each and every one of you to give me the opportunity to do that. So now that I'm really learning how to do this and what to look for and how to manipulate the systems, I found the unredacted court documents to the ones that I mentioned last time. Do you remember there were those big black bars all over the page? Well, I know what's under most of them now, and I think it's very telling what TikTok was trying to hide. So we're going to get into that too. And I also, at the very end, want to cover some common questions as well, and we'll go through all of that. So without further ado, let me show you what just happened in federal court 3 days ago. So I just want to do a really super quick recap, very surface level for anyone who missed my first video on this, but I do recommend heading over and giving that a watch because I do a really epic deep dive on basically what it all means. In a very high level explanation, Eugenia has found herself in the middle of a huge social media lawsuit that has been going on since 2022. So it's really established, and these things move so slowly, so I'm not at all surprised that that's the case. It seems she's always kind of been a talking point for this case as like a prime example of how a creator can cause harm to minors, but she's not the only one. But when she had her Mother's Day incident and had a bit of a health thing live, the plaintiffs in this case got very interested. Now, this is a massive federal lawsuit against not just TikTok, but Meta, Snap, and pretty much all of the leading social media companies. It's families, schools, and government districts who are suing and claiming that these platforms are designed to be addictive and cause harm to children and teens. We're talking like depression, anxiety, conditions of Eugenia's type, and a few other things that I can't mention because YouTube does not like these words. Editing Vera here, I just want to jump in really quick because I know that some of you did have an issue with this particular clip from one of the legal websites. I do just want to highlight that they're not saying that these issues are caused, but they're caused or worsened due to social media. So I don't believe here they're saying that ADHD is caused by social media. I think they're saying it's worsened by social media, right? I hope that clears it up. I know there's a lot of words on the screen, a lot of information coming at you, but that was my interpretation of that. When Eugenia had her medical episode on TikTok's platform Live, the lawyers in this lawsuit immediately saw an opportunity and they started demanding documents from TikTok about her, about TikTok's relationship with her, about user complaints, and basically how much TikTok actually knew about Eugenia's situation. TikTok refused. They argued that it was outside the discovery period, which had ended 2 months prior. So in my last video, I found those unsealed court documents from August 13th of this year. The joint letter brief where both sides basically laid out their arguments, and I showed that this wasn't about Eugenia. This was about whether TikTok knowingly platformed harmful content to minors. But that was just the legal battle, both sides arguing their case, and now we have the ruling. Now, just before we get into the ruling, and I'm not edging you, I'm sorry, I'm getting there. This is very, very important because there are some errors that need correcting before we go through this document, because I think it may have a bearing on how this turns out. Now, I had on the timeline that Eugenia, quote unquote, collapsed on the 23rd of May. Now, that's because that's the date that had been in all of the legal documents. But of course, we know her Mother's Day incident actually happened on the 11th of May. Now, I have to admit I made an error here because if you know, Mother's Day is way off my radar, so I didn't think twice about the date. I kind of falsely assumed that legal documents would have the correct dates on them. Now I know better, my nuggets, because I believe why they're saying the 23rd is because they're pretty much basing all of their information on a sensationalized news article that was on MSN. You can also see here that there were many other news articles that just so happened to come out on the 23rd, which is probably why they put the 23rd on there. That is not actually the only error that was in these court documents. And if you were paying really close attention, they actually, in some cases, mixed up 2025 for 2024, and they're calling it a collapse. It wasn't a collapse. Again, that's from the news article. And yeah, there's just a whole host of things that are very wrong in these legal documents, which is concerning. And I can draw one conclusion: the plaintiffs need this mother clucker. Anyway, I just wanted to explain that. So if you do see any discrepancies in these documents, I really want you to keep your eyes open because these are not 100% correct. And that's concerning because I wonder if a good enough lawyer could actually then go and argue that it's invalid because it's the incorrect information. We'll get into it. Let's have a look. Okay, so on the 20th of October 2025, Magistrate Judge Peter H. Kang issued his ruling, and it's a split decision. So TikTok kind of lost, and the plaintiffs kind of lost, or won, depending on your perspective. Once again, I will link all of these documents below so you can fully go see everything. All of this information is completely verified because it is the legal documents themselves. So the introduction does say, upon careful review, the briefing and submissions, the court resolves the disputes to the additional discovery sought from TikTok as set forth herein. The court finds the dispute suitable for resolution without oral argument. So that means the judge has sat there and he's looked at it and we are good to go. So just to outline what this document is going to be covering, the parties' fundamental dispute concerns are: one, whether TikTok should be required to produce additional documents relating to a non-party, Eugenia Cooney, whether plaintiffs should be granted leave to take additional deposition of a specified TikTok witness previously deposed in February 2025, whose name parties had redacted, but are actually unredacted in the document that I have found. So again, this is very inconsistent. Who therefore the court will refer to in this public order as the TikTok witness. And three, whether plaintiffs should be granted leave to take the deposition of Eugenia Cooney. Now, this document is quite lengthy and it basically goes into the arguments over again, and it also goes into the judge's basis as to why he's made the decision that he has. I'm not going to redo everything again, but if you want to read it yourself, it's all there. And if you're an absolute law nerd, I respect you, I see you, it's there if you want to read it. So 4.1, request for the extra documents from TikTok. They say, quote, after the close of fact discovery, Cooney apparently fell ill during a live stream broadcast on TikTok on May 23rd, 2025. Whoa. Cooney also apparently visited TikTok's offices in New York around this same date. After learning of these events, plaintiffs requested TikTok to produce supplemental documents concerning Cooney. The parties did not reach an agreement on this issue, resulting in the instant letter briefing, which is what my last video was about. So do you see what I mean? This has been stated as May 23rd. Now, what the court rules, I think, could actually play into this, and it's concerning. So the ruling, and this is where I'm feeling a little unstable about this document, TikTok is ordered to perform a reasonable search for and make inquiry for documents from a reasonable number of custodians who either were directly involved in Cooney's visit to TikTok's New York offices in May 2025 or were directly involved in any user safety media inquiry or user complaint issues concerning Cooney's May 2025 TikTok livestream event. The court orders TikTok to include among those custodians the TikTok witness who was deposed in February 2025. Now, so it's the wording perform a reasonable search for that makes me concerned here, right? They do go on into this document to define what a reasonable search is, but could TikTok not say, okay, we're looking for everything that happened on the 23rd of May 2025 and everything that everybody had to say about Eugenia's live stream on that day? And that's going to turn up exactly what? Is that not all they have to? Are there any lawyer nuggets in the audience at the moment who can tell me, is this a massive loophole? Because as somebody with no legal training here, I feel like I could argue this satisfactorily, right? I don't know. I don't like it, but at least the court has said, yes, we want to see more documents and you are to provide them, which means my nuggets, we might get to see them ourselves. Yes. Also, I'm thinking of looking into that February deposition, because if that TikTok employee was questioned about what they know about Eugenia, I think that might be an interesting video too. So I'm fully all over this at this point. This will continue to be an update from me whenever something new happens in this case. So the judge also continued that by no later than November 10, 2025, TikTok shall serve supplemental responses to document requests, and in such responses shall indicate whether, after a good faith reasonable inquiry of those custodians called for by this order, any non-privileged responsive documents exist which relate to Cooney's May 2025 visit to TikTok's New York offices. So their second point is relating to whether or not they can depose Eugenia to actually get her on the stand under oath and answer a bunch of questions. So the argument is, in addition to the documents sought, plaintiffs request that the court issue an order granting plaintiffs leave to take a further deposition of a specific TikTok witness, that's the employee, and a deposition of Cooney herself. TikTok opposes this request because it's untimely, aka outside of the discovery period, and because there was no meet and confer on this issue. Now, this gets into a little bit of legal jargon, but I just wanted to have it in here. So, as discussed above, the amendment to Rule 26E clarify that the obligation to supplement responses to formal discovery request applies to interrogations, request for production, and requests for admissions, but not ordinarily to deposition testimony. There is thus no legal basis to request a supplementing deposition under Rule 26E. I just wanted to put that in there because it's the judge's justification to say that, no, I don't actually see a warranted reason to be deposing these two individuals for further discovery. So, and quote, accordingly, the court denies plaintiff's request to do further deposition of TikTok or a deposition of Cooney. With regard to Cooney, the court notes, and this is important, that she is a third party and has not appeared in this action. So she's kind of evidence, is what they mean, not actually a participant in this lawsuit. Indeed, no leave to serve a subpoena was requested, and she may be wholly unaware that her deposition was even sought by the plaintiffs. As noted above, the court is particularly aware of its obligation to enforce the duty imposed on a party or attorney issuing a subpoena to, quote, take reasonable steps to avoid imposing undue burden or expense on a person subject to the subpoena. Cooney's interest as a third-party potential target of discovery in this case have been addressed, at least in part by TikTok's opposition, but nothing in this order is intended to or makes any findings as to any objections Cooney herself may have as a third party. So she's essentially only able to be used as an example and nothing more. And I found that interesting that she may not know. I do kind of hope that it wasn't my video that's made her aware that she was involved in this. I do hope, surely she does have some sort of inkling because of what's happened to her account. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe she wasn't aware. So to conclude, end quote, accordingly, for all the reasons discussed herein, the court grants in part plaintiff's motion to compel TikTok to serve supplemental responses to specific document requests and produce non-privileged responsive documents if any exist, as discussed above. Further, the court denies plaintiff's request for leave to take further deposition of the TikTok witness and denies plaintiff request for leave to take Cooney's deposition. And that resolves the dockets in this part of the lawsuit and signed off. It is so ordered, October 20, 2025 by Peter H. Kang. So what does this actually mean, and what documents will we see? So specifically, the judge has asked TikTok to search for documents surrounding specifically just the office visit and the live stream incident. For the office visit, this could mean things like meeting agendas, presentations, materials from Eugenia's visit to TikTok's New York offices, but only if those materials concern actual or potential adverse impact on user safety. So it's not just everything, it's kind of specifically to do with this case and what it's trying to achieve, right? And for the live stream, what we might see are like internal analysis about whether Eugenia's incident was problematic or impacted youth safety, communications about media inquiries, communications with employees or PR firms about when it happened, which I imagine there would be something around that. Having worked in a big corporate before, I would be really surprised if HR and PR were not involved when that went down. And also user complaints that TikTok has received about adverse effects on youth safety. And so here's what's fascinating. The judge specifically cited, because, quote, that there is thus a basis to conclude that TikTok received media inquiries, if not other investigations or other government inquiries, related to user safety based on or stemming from Cooney's May 2025 live stream. So the judge believes TikTok got media inquiries, and that means we'll get to see those communications. And also, quote, similarly, there is a basis to conclude that TikTok sent communications to employees and contract/vendors, such as public relations firms, on whether or how to discuss whether Cooney's May live stream was problematic. So TikTok was coordinating their PR response, essentially, which makes sense to me. Of course they would. Deciding on whether to acknowledge this publicly or not. And we're going to see those internal discussions too, unless they manage to find that loophole. Okay, so with the most recent update out of the way, let's take a look at these unredacted documents that I found. Now, a lot of it is just that particular employee's name. Now, I did go back and forth whether to keep this hidden, but these aren't accessible to the public. So I'm feeling like if this is a cluck up on the court's behalf, that's on them. I feel like I've downloaded these legitimately. They are available to everybody. And so I'm just showing you literally what is on those documents. But as always, like, don't go finding these people, don't go contacting these people. That's not what this is about. This is just their legal stuff, okay? All right, so what I've done is I've taken the original document that I did my last video on, and then I've taken this second document, which is listed in my description if you want to look at it. And I just want to have a look side by side because there were some huge redacted parts. So the first one is at the top of page 4. We can see 2 black lines here. Now, one of them is a name, but the other one, specifically discussing point 1, TikTok's relationship with Eugenia Cooney, a TikTok creator suffering from a condition, who TikTok blank, who TikTok what? Who TikTok managed, paid, and promoted. That's what TikTok wanted redacted. Are you kidding me? Are you clucking kidding me? Think about those words and what they mean. Managed, paid, and promoted. That is critical for the plaintiff's argument about whether or not harm is imposed on minors watching this content. Basically, if the plaintiffs can prove that TikTok was aware of the condition, and then they can prove that TikTok actively managed, paid, and promoted her after knowing that, that is a really big problem for TikTok to overcome. Also on page 4, this is just above the photos that the plaintiffs had included. So images of Ms. Cooney are below blank. In TikTok's own words, Ms. Cooney is a whole lot of blanks. So what is she? And then a little bit further down, TikTok brought her into its inner circle blank at branded events, including TikTok's live programming and TikTok's live battles entitled Road to Superstar. And I said, I'd love to see what's under there because I know it's something juicy. I know that TikTok does not want that out there. So this is the unredacted paragraph, and I have to censor it, so bear with me, but it's on the screen if you want to see the actual words. Images of Ms. Cooney are below. Name was redacted. In TikTok's own words, Ms. Cooney is a controversial influencer who is widely known in the pro-condition community for having a condition. That is damning. So that means that those are TikTok's own words, knowing that that's what she's about. That is TikTok directly admitting that they were fully aware of what she was doing. And then that big juicy one underneath, TikTok brought her into its inner circle, managing her, paying her, and promoting her at branded events. So this is, again, this is from that deposition in February. Yeah, I think I need to do a video on that. So this is from an employee of TikTok saying this. That's going to be hard for them to overcome. And then finally, the last paragraph on page 4. Meanwhile, TikTok's trust and safety team was unaware of what? Of what? Meanwhile, TikTok's trust and safety team was unaware that TikTok had hired Ms. Cooney as a paid influencer. When trust and safety employees learned about the relationship, the team voiced shock and, quote, wow, regarding her being managed by us. Other internal documents state that Ms. Cooney's account has been reported, redacted, by various external redacted partners due to how many consider her appearance to be triggering for body image. Now, this continues on the next page, and the next page, page 5, just basically had this entire redacted section except for Dr. Bryn Austin's name and saying he's from Harvard. So this is what this paragraph actually said. In another message, the TikTok witness expressed concern that TikTok's sponsorship of Ms. Cooney would be a quote, barn burner. Is this an Americanism? I've never heard this, a barn burner. I suppose catastrophic is what that's meaning. With TikTok's condition consultants. Indeed, TikTok's consultants were concerned. One, Dr. Bryn Austin from Harvard, recommended that TikTok warn the public, but TikTok ignored this advice. And then it goes on to say TikTok feared blank. That's still redacted. I can't find that sentence. But it goes on to say, further, TikTok discussed how to handle media inquiries concerning Ms. Cooney's health, and in the event of her unaliving, wow, they even have gone this far. Potential online tributes and glorification. The TikTok witness testified that TikTok eventually removed Ms. Cooney from its creator fund, but her recent visit to TikTok's New York office, described below, calls that into question. So does this not solidify even more as to why Eugenia is experiencing a ban on her account, or at least being told you absolutely cannot upload, because she is a walking liability for them at the moment. And as I went into detail in my previous video, they can't just delete her account because that can be seen as destroying evidence, but they can't let her keep posting either because she's a barn burner. It's a really bad situation for TikTok to be in. And the only other unredacted section is at the bottom of page 7. Quote, worse, plaintiffs asked the court to compel the TikTok defendants to produce, again, documents concerning events from over a year ago that the TikTok defendants have already produced, and in these cases, blank. The blank is, for example, restrictions placed on Ms. Cooney's account and her removal from the Creator Rewards program. So what all of this is saying to me is, taking into account the current update as well. I said in my last video that surely if Eugenia and her family can prove that this isn't the condition that we think it is, then all of this goes away, right? Because then all of a sudden you're condemning somebody with a condition that potentially doesn't harm people, although that also brings into question intent, doesn't it? Oh, that's a whole philosophical rabbit hole that I could delve. Let's not for this video, let's for another one. Okay, so if we can then conclude that the condition that Eugenia has is the condition that we think it is, and we are also now able to conclude that TikTok has been removing her from Creator Rewards programs, I do feel like that does kind of imply that we know why she's not online. Now, I have had people asking me, well, this is just TikTok. Why isn't she on YouTube? Why isn't she on Instagram? May I just draw your attention back to who is involved in this lawsuit? Now, TikTok is the squeaky wheel because it was TikTok's platform that this health incident happened on Mother's Day. But all of Meta and YouTube and Snap are all involved in this lawsuit. So do you think any of them, after seeing what's going down with TikTok at the moment, want her to be posting on their platforms? And if you notice, they all kind of stopped at the same time, because you can see the Buzz video she put up is the last one. And in fact, the only one that content is going up on is Lemon8, and Lemon8 is the only one that isn't involved in this lawsuit. This is not a coincidence. Allegedly, probably, maybe, whatever. I don't think this is a coincidence. Okay, so really quick, before we get into some commonly asked questions, let's just run down the full picture. So here's what these unredacted documents prove. TikTok hired Eugenia as a paid influencer. TikTok managed her. TikTok put her in the Creator Rewards program and then out of it. TikTok promoted her at branded events like Road to Superstar. TikTok's own trust and safety team didn't even know about this relationship. And when trust and safety found out, they were shocked. TikTok had conditions consultants who warned them this would be a problem, and a Harvard expert recommended TikTok warn the public, and they ignored this advice. TikTok discussed how to handle media inquiries about her condition. TikTok eventually removed her from the Creator Fund, and then she visited their office, which calls everything into question. And this is reportedly from TikTok witnesses themselves. So I'm going to be very interested to go into that in detail. So the legal implications of this, and again, remember, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not even American, in case you didn't notice. Hi. So I'm going to relay the best of my knowledge about this, but please do your own fact checking and come to your own conclusions based on that. So from what I understand, normally social media platforms are protected by something called Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. Basically, it says platforms aren't liable for content posted by users. It's third-party content, right? So a very hands-off approach. The platform didn't create it, they just hosted it. But Section 230 has limits. And one of those limits is if you have a direct business relationship with someone, if you're paying them and managing them, they're not just a random user posting content anymore. They're someone you have a contractor or almost employment relationship with. And if you're paying and managing someone whose content is generating complaints about harm to minors, if experts are telling you it's a problem, if your own trust and safety team would be shocked if they knew, and you do it anyway because engagement, because money, that pulls away from, oh, we're just a neutral platform. That turns into, we have a direct relationship with this person and we're actively profiting from potentially harmful content while ignoring warnings. So is it no wonder that they redacted that information? Now, the only part of this that is alleged that I'm theorizing myself because, and if it walks like a chicken and talks like a chicken, it's a clucking chicken. So in my last video, I theorized that Eugenia's ban from TikTok, which happened on June 29th, right in the middle of all of this, like a week after the plaintiffs were like, oh, we need this person in our exhibit list. I theorized that that was about legal strategy and not content moderation. The ruling that the judge has made and these unredacted documents are actually supporting my theory even more, because if we have a really quick look at this timeline again, you can actually see where things start going down, what's happening, and the fact that Eugenia spontaneously went missing off all social media right smack bang in the middle of it. And the judge found that the May events are relevant to the lawsuit, that TikTok likely has documents about safety concerns, media inquiries, and internal discussions about whether the health incident was problematic. So what did TikTok do? Once again, if you want more detail, go watch my other video. They froze her account. They stopped new evidence from being generated. No more live streams means no more incidents. No more content means no more user complaints. Created a cutoff point for the plaintiff's discovery. And that is how I believe, in my humble chokin opinion, that this is how we know it's legal strategy and not content moderation. Okay, so what we're looking at moving forward, and I'm going to keep a really close ear to the ground. I'm also looking at starting live streams again, so I will be actively keeping up to date with this stuff with you if you want to come and hang out with me. So what we're looking at for the immediate timeline, we know that on November 10th, TikTok needs to serve supplemental responses to the document requests. And I think that it will be very interesting come that date whether we find out if there were documents. And I almost wonder if there aren't, because just the complaints alone, surely. But if there are no documents, does that mean that they found a loophole in that date that I'm worried about? And they also mentioned in the documents that as of November 17th, the first weekly joint status report filings will start. So these are going to be public court documents showing progress, and they might be very interesting as well. And December 4th, all responsive documents must be produced by this date. And that will essentially mark the completion of this area of discovery. But I'll be watching, checking all the court dockets, and if anything interesting gets unsealed or produced, I will be here to let you know about it. For Eugenia herself, I still don't know what's happening with her. There's no other updates for her personally, only the Disney sighting, and yeah, we're not seeing promising things. This would be such a wonderful time for her to spend looking after herself, but it's kind of looking like she's not doing that. As an eternal optimist, I hope that she's taking this time to turn it around, and I hope that we see an improvement if she ever does come back. Okay, so I just wanted to cover some questions that I've been getting. So is this legit? Absolutely. These are all court documents. As I said, the only things that I'm alleging that aren't proven is that her ban is related to this. There's no proof to say yet that that's linked. And also, there's no proof to say that the fact that she's on Lemon 8 is because it is not involved in this lawsuit. So they're the only parts that I'm really alleging. The rest of it is literally from court documents. So you can't make this stuff up. I covered, why isn't she on all of the other platforms? That's a very regular question that I'm being given. Another question that I'm getting a lot is, where do I think this is going to lead? And I I am a little bit of a natural cynic with these sorts of things when it comes to major corporations or even government entities in certain aspects where, we see these sorts of massive lawsuits come up and we want everybody to be taking accountability. And it just kind of always seems like people get paid off or people get a slap on the wrist and then it all kind of travels on as normal after a time. And it makes me think, well, why even bother? But having said that, I think we have historically seen some very meaningful change culturally because of big lawsuits. So perhaps it's always worth trying. I am cynical when it comes to big corporates. Absolutely. And social media is just it's gotten so out of hand over the years. I think that sums up everybody's questions that they have for me. But if you have any others, please leave them in the comments below. I will just make note at the moment, the comment section in YouTube is very buggy from a creator perspective, where I have to actually go in and manually look, and I can't filter out ones that I've already responded to, so it does kind of look like a bit of a mess. Plus, I'm actually getting comments on my videos that are clearly meant for other people's videos, so it's a little bit tricky for me at the moment, but I'm responding to everybody that I can. And if you're a new nugget because of this video, please announce yourself. I love to say hello and I love to meet you. But if you're still here listening to me, thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. And a big, epic thank you to all of my cluckers who are supporting me on Patreon and YouTube memberships. If you also want to support my channel, they're available there for you as well. But that is all the clucks I have left to give. Stay golden, my little nuggets, and I'll catch you next time.
Hey, 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 hey! I'm gonna go watch another video. Let's go!